This is Sydney.
And this is Chloe.
And this is Green Room, where a bunch of pastors' kids get to talk about what church is like and our experiences. All right, welcome back to episode 2
of Green Room.
So last episode, Chloe interviewed me, kind of just growing up as a pastor's kid. What was it like? Just all the things. And then this episode, I get to interview you, which will be
People get ready.
Super fun. People get ready. So anyways.
Yeah.
Okay, so, Chloe, hi.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so happy you're here. Welcome to my studio. Okay, so tell me, where were you born? Kind of where'd you grow up?
So, unlike Sydney, I was not born in Europe. I was born in Kansas City, Missouri.
Yeah.
So, my parents and Sydney moved to Kansas City in 1998, and I was born in 99. So, I was born about 3 weeks before IHOP went 24/7. So, I literally grew up in the prayer room at IHOP. Literally. So I lived in Kansas City all my childhood, and probably around 8, 9, 10 is when we started traveling even more. Mm-hmm. So we went to Asia a lot for like a month at a time. Then we started going to Brazil. And then in 2013, we moved to Brazil. So I was 13 at the time. And I lived in Brazil for 6 years. So from ages 13 to 19, which turns out pretty formative.
Yep.
Your entire teenage life.
Who knew?
And then from Brazil, we moved to Denver, Colorado, where my parents got a job pastoring a church. And then in 2021, we moved back to Kansas City. We had no idea what we were about to walk into, obviously.
Yeah. And get like a 2-second what you walked into.
So for those who are unfamiliar, so we moved back 2021, and at the end of 2020, what was last year? No, middle of 2023.
Yeah, 3. Sorry, we're in 24. Yeah.
Yeah. Middle of 2023, kind of this situation landed in my parents' lap. And it turns out the Mike Bickle that we knew and loved our entire lives was a complete lie. He was whatever, sexual predator. Yeah. Turns out pedophile, which is so great. And has basically been living a lie for 4 decades and built IHOP with a extremely dysfunctional culture that also fed into that, covers up stuff of like issues of sexual abuse. So a story, a very compelling testimony fell into my parents' lap, and they felt from the Lord to move forward. And
in confronting
and doing everything. And it is now very public, very loud, and very disturbing, all the stories that have come out. And so we moved back to Kansas City because it's like, oh, we have friends here. Yeah, less now. Less friends.
We'll come back to,
it's going to be great.
Everyone that we known and loved. And no one
was who they said they were.
Yeah. No one will look us in the face. Yeah. Okay. So would you say, like, because I think in the last episode, we kind of were able to make the distinction of like, there's like childhood and like teen adulthood. Mm-hmm. Childhood for you, like, what would you say overall, just growing up? Because at that time it was just IHOP for you as a pastor's kid. So overall, what would you say your experience was?
I think in general, I had a really positive childhood as well.
Yeah.
There was a lot involved in our childhood that for us felt normal, but it wasn't. Like in terms of being a pastor's ELT kid, the expectation, and I have just attracted so many weirdos.
Yeah.
And pedophiles turned out. We're fine, by the way.
We're doing great, guys.
We're great. So I think in general, I actually did have a positive childhood. I loved, like we talked about, I loved the prayer room.
Yeah.
I mean, there's this story that still goes around of me when I was 3 or 4. I really wanted long hair. but I had like a cute little blonde
It
bob.
was so cute.
So I would put tights on my head because it made me feel like I had long hair, and then I would go and dance in the prayer room.
Yeah. It's like Pippi
and just
Longstocking.
make all the worship leaders giggle from the stage. And I would, so IHOP is in like this strip mall. So there's tons of offices. There was the bookstore. There was the coffee shop. So we would go to the coffee shop. I would get salt and vinegar chips and strawberry milk.
Ooh,
Quite the combo. That right there is like, that's my childhood.
Which is such a weird.
I loved it. And funny. You weren't allowed to, the only thing at the time you could have in the program was water. You can now have coffee, I think.
And like probably a covered thing or
yeah,
something.
They're really strict. I'm like, calm down.
Well, okay, but that's valid though. It's 24/7. People are constantly in there. You don't want it to get nasty.
Right, sure. I didn't care. So I would sneak in strawberry milk and salt and vinegar chips and eat them like hidden in the prayer room.
I'm going to turn you into the Yellow Jackets.
Whatever. Come at me, man. So, I mean, I have a lot of those kinds of positive memories.
Yeah.
And we grew up going to the Signs and Wonders camps. So those are the kids' summer camps. So they're Awakening Teen Camp is for teenagers. Signs and Wonders for like 6 to 12. So for 6 years in a row, from ages 6 to 12, I went probably twice a summer to like all of the camps. We loved it.
All the things.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was
wild.
It was wild.
It was wild.
It was wild.
It was wild.
Where do you think, when you feel like it was like Jesus became real to you?
I think probably, so my mom tells me I got saved when I was 4. I don't remember. I think that's okay that I don't remember. But I think I was probably 8 when I had like a few specific dreams from the Lord that kind of went like, oh, this thing's for real.
Yeah.
And also, even I was an 8-year-old, just being confronted with my own selfishness and sin of, there's consequences when you're mean to your siblings or your friends, and realizing, oh, it actually matters how I treat people. It matters what I do.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably around 7 or 8. But I always saw the activity of the Holy Spirit, like in church. We were taught how to pray for the sick.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for that.
Totally.
Because I believe in praying for the sick.
Yeah.
And I just got a really unique view of, I think there's a lot of negatives to this, but IHOP really was a bubble. But there was a lot of cool stuff in that bubble sometimes. Yeah. And I learned how to pray. I learned how to prophesy. I learned how to pray for the sick. And I'm really appreciative of that.
Oh, absolutely. So, because when was your Polly Pocket dream?
I think it was around then that I was 8-ish.
So, because basically it was like you had a dream.
Yeah, I had a dream. I need to confirm. My mother knows exactly how old I was. I had a dream
I thought you were younger.
I might have been.
I think
we were in the White House.
We think we were older.
Right.
But we weren't.
I might have been like 6 or 7 then.
Apparently it's a sign of trauma.
Whatever.
Who knows?
Who knows? I'm fine. So actually, I think we were in our White House. So I actually might have been 6 when I had this dream.
Yeah. That sounds
so basically in the dream, and the Lord has always spoken to me through dreams, starting around when I was that age. So in the dream, I was in like this toy store or something, and there's these 3 doors, and I opened one door, and it's like a Polly Pocket Dreamland. That was my favorite toy as a kid. I hope they're still around because I'm going to make my children play with them. So Polly Pocket Dreamland.
You love this child.
Yeah, the second door was, I think it was like cupcakes, which I love cupcakes.
Amen.
And baked goods.
It's emotional healthiness right there.
Right. Eat your feelings. And then I opened the third door, and it was Jesus behind the third door. But I went back to the door with the Polly Pockets. And I remember waking up. I mean, I was devastated and like weeping. So I go tell my mom, in the morning. She's like, okay, tell me the dream again. And I'm telling her, and I'm just crying in her lap. And my parents taught Song of Solomon for a long time. Just to preface that, I actually think they did a good job teaching Song of Solomon. A lot of other people did not, and that's where it got super weird. But my mom loved Song of Solomon before even she went to IHOP.
Yeah, before IHOP, it was a thing.
Yeah.
But you mean like they didn't manipulate the book of Song of Solomon. And
no,
how
they
it was
didn't over
walked out.
sexualize our relationship with Jesus
Yeah.
because it shouldn't be. They didn't make it the end times because it's not.
Yeah.
My gosh.
Totally.
But I used to like go with my mom sometimes to the internships, or I have you to the class because it was special. So I'm 6, 7 and crying in my mom's lap saying I chose the wine over Jesus's love, which is a reference to Song of Solomon like 1-2, that your love is better than wine.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what wine was really, but knowing that like I chose something over Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think that was a huge turning point in my life where that's really when I took my relationship with the Lord serious, even as a kid.
Yeah.
And a certain amount of like integrity grew in me that like my choices matter.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
So, because I'm curious because like for me, because you also enjoyed singing, but it wasn't later really until like Brazil. So like I instantly almost, it felt like I immediately connected with the prayer room because it was so much like music and singing and worshiping and like singing the word. Like,
what was that like for me?
Yeah. What was it like for you? Because that wasn't necessarily
my gift mix.
Yeah. Or even just really like your instant, like, this is how I connect with the Lord,
right?
You know? So what was that like?
So I loved going to the prayer room because our friends were there. It felt like going, you know, daddy, daughter, work day, whatever.
Yeah.
And I admired a lot of the worship leaders. So I grew up like idolizing Misty Edwards and Laura Hackett. So I remember at home, we would literally put on like Baptize My Heart and People Get Ready and dance in the kitchen. Like there was no, I mean, we watched shows and stuff, but those were the songs we asked for.
Totally.
So the prayer room, I think for me, wasn't necessarily as musically driven. I did love to pray on the microphone, like to pray for whatever. I would get paid to do that a lot. Like Mike would give us money.
I forgot about that.
I don't think I love to pray on the mic because he gave me money. I think it was a benefit.
Yeah, it was like a, wow, I'm so proud of you. Here you go.
Yeah.
Because, hey, I made bank off him.
Oh my gosh, everyone did.
As a kid.
I mean, we made a lot of money off of him. And I'm fine with that.
And especially because we were like, for a while, we were like some of the only girls.
Yeah.
And so we were like the little, and there was, the Bickles didn't have grandkids yet.
Right.
So we were like spoiled.
Yeah.
Spoiled.
Yeah. For real.
Which in hindsight, I'm like, like,
yeah, I'm like, I'm not giving back a cent of that money.
Absolutely not.
So, I mean, I liked praying on the mic because it felt like a challenge and I felt brave when I did it because it was.
It's like jumping off the high dive at a pool.
Yeah, except
like,
I don't do that.
Yeah. No.
Yucky. But I loved praying on the mic and I admired singing and all of that. So I had a desire when I was a kid to sing, but I think I was kind of born tone deaf. So the musical interest in development didn't really happen until Brazil when I was 13 to 19. And then I was like, oh, it actually takes effort.
Like you can learn. You just have to try.
Learn. I think most people can actually learn to sing.
Yep.
It just might take years of voice lessons. So I think I connected in a different way. But gosh, did I love the communion station in the back of the prayer room because it was free snacks.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The little cups of juice and all the wafers.
100%.
And I would take more than one.
Yeah, you're there for an hour. You deserve a little treat. Yeah. Get yourself get $1 from Mike Bickle, get some chocolate, and then another snack at the communion.
Yeah. And I actually appreciate this with Mom is that she set us up for success in the prayer room.
Yes.
So we would bring, coloring pages and toys. We'd go for, an hour and then we'd take breaks and we'd get a treat in the coffee shop and then we'd come back. So it wasn't this like, you will sit in the prayer room for 4 hours straight when you're 6 years old. Like not at all.
Yeah.
So it felt special to go. And the way our parents kind of set it up, like they set us up for success so that we actually did enjoy the prayer room and it didn't feel like a heavy, you have to go to the prayer room.
Yeah. They helped us with the capacity of a 6 and 9-year-old to enjoy worshiping the Lord like a 6 and 9-year-old.
Yeah, dancing in the little dance.
Yeah, and not being pressure of like, you have to have the maturity of a 58-year-old man. You know what I mean? It was just like, you love Jesus, and you do it in your way.
Because I was talking to a friend of ours who grew up at IHOP as well, and he was talking about the pressure on the children to be adults. And just the way he phrased it, I hadn't thought of it that way, that it's like, you can pray like an adult. The same Holy Spirit that's in the adults is also in the kids, which is true.
No, 100%.
Like, you can do this like an adult. You can pray like, pray like your parents, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I think it actually caused in some people, like, in almost it such a heavy burden, and realizing they were 9, just lay 100%.
off. They were 5,
right? And that was just unnecessary. So I appreciate the way that our parents did it, where it was an enjoyable experience.
Same. And I think that was across the board. Growing up, there were phrases like that were so radical and intense, and like when you hear it, it sounds like it's so like glorified and is shown as it's like super holy, but then the actual like implementation of those things was off. Mm-hmm. And it would be like, no, this is actually it's too much. Mm-hmm. It's too much. Like, I remember going, I was in CEC, the Children's Equipping Center, and there was some teaching on this is probably around the time you had your Polly Pocket dream, because I took it a very different way. And it was like something about like we can't love things more than God. And I'm sure there's like 20 different Bible verses they use, and kind of, but it was like, it was too much for a child, and I'm hearing it, and I remember going to, it was probably like Old Navy in the clearance section, because we shop in the clearance section,
straight to the back.
We know what we're doing. And I was shopping, and normally, like, I actually really enjoyed clothes for a while. Like, I was like, I like dressing up and da-da-da. And I remember like finding a shirt and being like, oh, I so love it, and getting like excited, and like a normal, like, just say, I'm going to look so pretty in this. Like, oh my gosh. And normally, if I really like something, you could see it on my face. Like, I would show Mom, like, oh my gosh, like, look, this is so cute. Can I get this? And I grabbed it, and then I was like, I probably shouldn't get this. Like, it's too nice. I don't deserve, like, not even so much I don't deserve it, but like, Jesus is more worthy than a t-shirt. But it was like, I needed clothes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was like, these are the basic needs. And God,
because she was living the fasted lifestyle.
Yeah, as a child. And that was being taught to me, instead of, hey, you need to be actually, God nurtures and cares for you. And there are times where you get to choose to make sacrifices to press in and acknowledge your human frame and say, God, I want you more than other things, and getting your priorities and values straight. But
the 9-year-old wanting the shirt at Old Navy was not that.
100%. And so, like, I just remember little things like intense phrases like that, and the way
it wasn't pastored.
No, not at all. And it was just assumed like we all got it, because no one actually talked and processed things because, again, it was gossip and bad. So fun times. So, CEC, positive experience for the most part.
Yeah. But I think, kind of going back to those intense statements, I think a lot of messages that were preached to adults, there was a child version that was taught.
Yes.
And I'm going to be honest, I didn't need to know about the end times when I was 8 years old.
Totally.
I didn't need to know about the coming persecution. Mm-hmm. And I didn't need to live in fear that, my family was going to get killed in front of me. Like,
oh, yeah.
I think there was a lot of introducing of information extremely prematurely to children.
Yes.
And this was, that's not what we talked about at home. That's what was talked about at church and even school or among friends, because, my gosh.
Totally. Oh, 100%. Yeah, I would have nightmares all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that was normal.
Right. And it was just like, can we not?
Yeah.
It was really unnecessary. And the overemphasis on the end times, I think, caused a lot of damage in a lot of people.
Yes.
Like, even recently, there's, like, the Return Conference, which, whatever. There was a panel of young moms and Mike. And they literally, like, this is on YouTube, they talk about doing what Mike called mental push-ups to picture your child getting killed in front of you because you won't deny Jesus.
What?
And I'm like, that's sick. That is sick.
Holy cow.
And I'm just like, now looking at that, I'm going, what a sick overemphasis on the end times.
Yeah.
That this is going to happen to all of us all at the same time.
Yeah.
This, like, it was not an if, it was a when. And I'm like, you know what?
Jeez.
He might not return for another 100 years.
Yeah, 100%.
But I'm still called to, like, love people now.
Mm-hmm. Like,
so,
actually walk out the first and second commandment.
not just be a end time messenger.
Yeah. Like, actually do what Jesus did.
Yeah. So,
Jeez.
a lot of that kind of stuff was introduced to us really early. Like, there was literally an end times board game. There was this time where there's these little cards that you would buy in the bookshelf at the bookstore, and it's like, how many trumpets are there, how many bowls are there, how long is like the 7-year period, what is the abomination of desolation. And there were competitions at the staff meeting, where it's like the ELT members like, versus their kids, and usually the kids won.
Let's go. I never did it. I was too scared.
I'm glad.
Yeah,
neither of us did. It was other people, because it was like, one, I didn't know if I could win, and if I can't win, then why try? But also weird. Yeah.
But also the staff meetings then were like, they were big. Like, it wasn't just like 20 people.
It was like
to give context.
1,500.
Yeah. So it's like you're standing there. Yeah, it was just a lot. Yeah, it was really interesting. So, okay, so childhood, there's that. Yeah. It's a lot, but it's positive.
Yeah. One thing I will say, and I've been writing on Substack about this, is actually like,
which is really good, and you all should go read it.
Thank you. It's free.
It's for free.
For now. Is like, in terms of that like introducing way too much information to children. The Awakening, there was a heavy emphasis on testimonies, which, I mean, that's biblical. I believe in testimonies.
Yeah.
What I do not believe in is parading up these 20-something-year-old girls to share about how they were delivered from self-hatred after their, like, sexual assault experiences.
Yeah.
And these same girls would be paraded onto that stage to share their stories again and again and again. And it was wrong. First off, they should have never had to even share that stuff on a stage in front of 2,000 people, plus online, plus God TV.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, wow. Yeah. Forgot about that.
Yeah. All the Awakening was on God TV. And I was 10 years old-ish around the Awakening, and I was introduced to so much information that I shouldn't have even known about, such as sexual assault or self-harm or eating disorders.
Like details of those things.
Like graphic, unnecessary details. And there were a lot of kids in that room.
Yes.
And
tons of young families.
And there should have been way more filtering about what's shared on a stage.
Oh, yeah.
For the sake of the people in the room and that poor person who's going to have an insane vulnerability hangover later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think I'm probably not alone in that feeling of, I would just too much.
Yeah.
Too much.
Yeah. I think what's really funny is like, and I think it's one, because we're both in counseling, like just processing life, which is really good. But then also like me just really taking a deep dive into like, because this is like kind of a side note, but I'm just realizing like there are so many things that I just blocked out and I don't remember, but you remember. And it's kind of like, it's helpful to hear each other's perspectives because it kind of like fills in
gaps.
Yeah. Because like even talking to some of my friends that we grew up with, like, and I'm not gonna lie, like some of the things that I'm starting to remember some really like rough stuff, but like it's only like coming in pieces. And so when I talk to friends or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, that was very normal and that happened all the time. And I'm like, what? You know what I mean? But like our brains, like,
I mean, it's actually how we're made. Yeah. And there's a point where it's
to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
Until it's time and we found a safe place. Yeah.
Brings it up. Yeah. It's really true.
And I'm really thankful that like in all of this, especially as pastors' kids, like we get that, not especially as pastors' kids, like we have a special access to God, but like, you know, if we choose to, we have access to Jesus and he can heal us and restore us and, you know, wipe all that clean. So
totally,
it's really like interesting to hear even your perspective of like the Awakening. Cause I'm like, oh yeah, actually that was so true.
And not helpful.
Yeah. So not helpful. Yeah. I remember hearing a graphic story.
Yep. It was like,
and I was like, Mom, what does this mean? And my mom was like, oh my, okay. Like instantly prayed for me. Like,
right.
Lord protect her. You know what I mean?
And that was something that was especially difficult for our mom. Like she emailed people, she talked to people, and they're like, yeah, we agree, but nothing ever changed.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's IHOP to a T.
Yeah,
really.
pretty much. So, okay, so now fast forward, you move to Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
What was Brazil like? Because we moved there, and we didn't speak any Portuguese. We kind of just land on an island in a way, and we're like, we're gonna
do this thing,
hopefully find a place to live, and we're gonna rent a room in a hotel, and we're just gonna worship Jesus, and if people show up, cool.
And they did.
And I was shocked. I don't even know. I was like,
yeah,
it was crazy.
So in 2012, and I still believe this now, the Lord clearly spoke to move to Brazil.
Oh, yeah.
I have no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
And I think it was twofold. It was, I'm sending you to do this mission in Brazil, and I'm letting you leave IHOP.
Yes.
We didn't know that at the time, but I'm so thankful that I moved away from IHOP when I was 13. Mm-hmm. So moving there was hard and exciting. And the first year was kind of getting a lay of the land where we lived. It was an island in the southeast of Brazil called Florianopolis. The nickname is Floripa.
Floripa.
I love where we lived.
Oh,
it was so beautiful, amazing food, amazing people.
Yeah.
And so the first year was figuring out how to go to the grocery store. Mm-hmm. Like moving to another country is insane, and I kind of love it. Yeah. So it was learning Portuguese, figuring out Brazilian culture, which is not clear cut at all.
Right.
So it took us a long time to figure some things out, and it was really painful until we did.
Because it's also like you have Brazilian culture, but then you have like religious faith culture within Brazilian culture.
And then dysfunctional family culture, which is everywhere.
Yeah.
But it can take a long time to be able to decipher, okay, what's Brazil, what's church in Brazil, and what's this person's crazy family.
Yeah.
So people are like, the phrase that would drive me up the wall is aqui no Brasil, it's here in Brazil, and I'm like,
do things.
No, that's just you wanting me to do something for you.
Right.
So it took all of us a while to navigate that stuff.
Yeah.
But
and I will say Brazil is like from the north to the south drastically different. Like Brazil is huge.
It's huge. Most people don't realize it, and it is. It's just as diverse as the United States.
Yeah. If not more.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So the Lord, and this is abnormal for missions, but the Lord breathed on what we did very fast.
Yeah.
Like we grew real fast. And it was amazing. Like our first internship had 28 people. We thought like 3 were going to come.
Totally.
And then our church grew, and then the prayer room grew, and then we did conferences, and everything grew really quickly, which was amazing. But it came at a tremendous cost to our family personally.
Yeah.
The stress was intense.
Yeah.
And the financial pressure, the first year was great. My parents had raised a lot of supporters, and then it just went downhill, and we didn't know why. We just thought we were losing supporters, and my parents would, travel every weekend on Friday and Saturday to go preach at some church, and then be back and do 3 services at our church on Sunday, and then Monday you start all over again.
Yep.
So there was like
meanwhile
months.
During that, we're going to a Portuguese school.
Yes, for a minute we did.
That
was rough.
So rough.
We didn't know it was going to be rough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did Portuguese school for a semester, and then we started online school. We did Portuguese private lessons for a while, but honestly, I learned how to speak Portuguese in the prayer room.
Yeah.
I made friends, whatever. So it grew really fast, and there's an expectation on pastors' kids here in the States. In Brazil, it's like 10x.
Oh,
like
it's
pastor's family is royalty, and
it almost feels like
word
the Kardashians.
Final. Yeah. And the pastor's opinion is final. Like there are churches where the congregants go to the pastor to ask what color couch they should buy.
Yeah.
So my parents were fighting against that culture, going, no, go ask. Make
God
your own.
God gave you free will, use it.
And critical thinking skills, hopefully go use it.
Yeah.
So it was fighting against that and just the expectation, and I think we all dealt with that differently. I have a certain amount, a skill of going, you know what? I don't care what you think of me. So I really rode on that wave to the point where I had quite the reputation. But it was around year 3 when Sydney went to the US that the financial pressure was getting pretty insane.
Yeah.
And we didn't know why. And then it came out that our CPA for our nonprofit of 10 plus years was embezzling from us. So that was rough.
Love that.
Like suddenly there's no money.
Yeah.
Like we couldn't have insurance, but she was paying for her family's insurance out of our account. Like
yeah,
buying herself tacos all the time. It ended up being a substantial amount of money from several years, probably more.
Yeah.
So that was a really, really, really intense season because my parents, I mean, my dad would go 3 months without a single day off because he's just traveling and then back and doing it again just to pay the rent. So that was intense.
Which should not have even, because at that time, even like the dollar to the real, which is the Brazilian currency, like
was so strong.
Yeah, we should have had like
fine.
Yeah, like even with a bare minimum raised in support as missionaries, we still should have been totally fine because the dollar was so strong.
Yeah. It was like just so tight. And that pressure, of course, was just like we were all starting to feel it.
Yeah.
So that was a huge relief when we found that out, but it took a long time to clean things up, obviously.
Yes.
So in that time, that was about when I was 16. I was doing online school at that point, and
you were the president of?
In my online high school, I was the representative of all of the students in the Southern Hemisphere of like the world. So Africa.
It's on her resume.
It was.
She's a big deal.
On my resume. I won an election. I made a video. It was great. And then so after I did high school for a year online, and then I was like, high school sucks. So I dropped out and started college.
Valid.
Because I'm extra.
The only dropout in our family.
Yes, my brother reminds me I'm a high school dropout. But I did graduate college. So
there you go.
So when I was about 16, I was full time in the prayer room. When I got to Brazil, I really wanted to be involved in the prayer room, but had zero really musical skill. So I started like religiously doing voice lessons. And then eventually when I was older, started doing piano lessons, I think. But I was really involved in the prayer room, like 25 plus hours a week. So I was full-time student, full-time in the prayer room. And then I like started the HR department when I was 15 because I was like, we need to keep track of everyone's vacation days. So just stuff like that. So when I was like 16, 17, I'm in the prayer room.
You're so cool.
I forget these things till I start talking, and I
know, and you're like, oh yeah. That happened.
So I started like, I was on worship teams, or we're doing, 4 sets a week and rehearsal and everything. So I'm
in Portuguese.
So all of this, I mean, sometimes I would do 1 set a week in English, but
Which was really just for our own selves.
Right.
It was just to like
be able to
connect
sing
with
in
the
English.
Lord. Yeah.
But I have sung more on a microphone in Portuguese than I ever have in English.
Yeah.
Which I love.
Which is awesome.
It is.
Yeah. So
I was on worship teams with, obviously I was 16, 17, 18 with people that are way older than me. Early 20s to early 30s typically was the window. So all of my friends were always older, which I had no problem with because I had an abnormal maturity for someone of 16, 17, 18.
Yes.
But I was starting to figure out friendships at that age with the added dynamic of it being a different culture and then the pressure of a pastor's kid. And it took me a second to figure out how to discern why someone wants to be my friend.
Right.
So there was it was real messy there for a while with a lot of friendships because.
And I'll say that's like we've both experienced that in the States and in Brazil.
Right. And
just other countries and traveling around. That is something that's always on a pastor, missionary, leader, kid's mind. What are the actual intentions of you talking to me?
So I had a lot of just kind of painful experience with friends. So then I had an own internal rule that I observed somebody for 6 months in the prayer room or in the church before I'm like, okay, I can be friends with this person.
Yeah. I'll acknowledge
and
your
a lot of problems went away after I had that internal rule.
Okay.
So, and we opened a donut shop because I guess we were bored, which I don't know. So I did like marketing, social media for the donut shop. And I mean, I had 100% ownership of the prayer room.
Yeah.
I was there from day one in our living room.
Mm-hmm.
I believed in it. I was deeply involved. But I didn't know how to balance being full-time in a prayer room and a full-time college student at 16.
Right.
So there were several times where I like ran myself into the ground until I like have a breakdown because I just can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So it took me a while to find a balance of like enjoying your life and getting straight A's or whatever.
Yeah. Being the president of the whole like Southern Hemisphere.
Yeah, because that was a lot of responsibility. Just kidding.
On an online school.
Yeah. I mean, side note, the girl who became president of student government wanted to have an online prom. And I was like, dear Lord, no.
I love that. That's just, yeah, that's like a whole nother world. I'm just like, can't even understand.
I feel bad for you. I mean, she lives in the Bahamas. It was fine, but
yeah.
Wild. But we have a lot of crazy stories from Brazil.
Yeah.
But I loved living there.
Yeah.
It was really sad when we moved, and I love visiting there. A lot of my closest friends still live in Brazil.
Yeah.
And I talk to them all the time. I still speak Portuguese.
Yeah.
But I had to figure out how to deal with at any given moment in the prayer room, I would turn around and I was being watched.
Yeah.
Not like in a creepy way, but like I always had eyes on me.
But kind of like obsession way a little bit of like.
Yeah, there was a few times it was like, dude, back off.
Yeah.
So that was like again, I think we all dealt with it differently.
Mm-hmm.
But I just had a super high wall, really.
Yeah.
Which people would get mad at me for that. And I'm like, I have no problem with this.
Right. Yeah. You're creepy. Leave me alone.
I don't have to be friends with everybody. I don't owe anybody my friendship.
Yeah.
Just because I'm the pastor's kid, grow up and go away.
Yeah.
So that was something that I had to deal with a lot. But when I was able to find true, real friends. And those are people I still talk to today. And I love them dearly.
Yeah.
So Brazil, I mean, I loved Brazil. The food, the people. My birthday parties in Brazil were so amazing.
So epic. Oh my gosh.
I want to go back just on my birthday so I can have another
celebratory anything in Brazil. It's just
American
awesome.
Parties are so sad after having done
100%.
Brazil.
It's just
unless
sad.
we get to run them and we just raise the bar.
But also like weddings too.
Oh my gosh.
Weddings in Brazil are like insane.
I love them. So fancy.
Insane. Like even if they're not like if it's not like the couple has a ton of money, it's
even if it's a budget wedding.
Yeah, it's like the culture and like
everyone dresses like to the nines.
Oh, it's beautiful and everyone just has like so much fun. Like we're gonna dance like all night long and we're gonna just have fun. Like yeah. Brazilians are so good at celebrating. Yeah. So okay, so Brazil, then you come back to Kansas City.
Denver first.
Oh yeah, sorry. I know that. We were there. Yeah, I was like, we were there. So Denver, do you want to talk about Denver?
I'll do like a 30-second back in Denver. So 2019, so my younger brother Elijah was starting to not like thrive in Brazil. Schooling was getting really difficult. There wasn't a lot of great options. And he communicated to my parents like, I'm done. Yeah. So we decided to go on a fast, and my dad's like, either the Lord's going to tell us to move back or he's going to change your heart. He told us to move back like so clearly. And it was really hard for me because I was finally getting into a good groove. I was about to finish school and I was excited to like jump in even more to the prayer room. So long story short, we end up moving to Denver because my parents got a job at Upper Room Denver. It is now called something else.
The House.
I think it's just House Denver.
Oh, House. Okay.
So, for years, I mean, I've always heard people talk about Colorado, Denver, Colorado Springs. It's like Christian Mecca.
Yeah.
And I cannot stand when people tell me to like something.
Yes.
Like
I'm out.
So I am a beach, ocean, water person. I think the mountains are pretty, but I'm not like on my knees weeping. And we went to Colorado, and the culture in the city and our church was so palatable. Like, we're better than you. If you don't dress this way, if you don't go hiking at this place every weekend, if you don't wear these $300 shoes that make you look homeless, like, you're not one of us.
Yeah, it's pretty like cliquey.
Very. And it's all about the mountains and how lucky you are to be here.
Yeah. And
I do not respond well to that. And I am a beach 5-star resort person. I'm not a camping in bear infested woods person.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that immediately was like, gross. And it's kind of interesting. A lot of people I've talked to have experienced that. And I just didn't really fit in with our church.
Yeah.
And our church ended up being very problematic, and we'll probably talk about that at another point. But it got to the point where I'm like, I hate living here.
Yeah.
So I had a job I didn't like. Well, I had 3 jobs. My main job I really didn't like. So September 2020,
mm-hmm.
I started researching study abroad programs. And I had already graduated college at that point. So I couldn't do like a study abroad necessarily. So I was looking, okay, internships.
Yeah.
So I found an internship program from Googling that I immediately applied to and got accepted. And this started okay, I'm going to Spain for 4 months. Bye.
Bye. See you later.
So I was just, I'm bored out of my mind. I don't like our church. I don't like my job.
Yeah.
Everyone here is weird. Not everyone. There was like 3 exceptions.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Valid.
And I was like, I want to learn another language.
Yeah.
So I went to Valencia, Spain for 4 months, and I did an internship in an ad tech company that I loved. The city was amazing. All of it was amazing. And at that point, like right before I left, my parents had resigned and were getting ready to transition everything over. Mm-hmm. There was a few events that had to expedite that process. That was really unfortunate. But like my last Sunday was my parents' last Sunday.
Yeah.
So it was this whole thing. We had to rush so quickly to do it because somebody announced it too early and nobody knew yet. And it was a mess.
Yeah.
So the whole time I'm in Spain, my whole family is in major limbo going like, okay, what are we doing now? Mm-hmm. So long story short, and it was rough because there was no clear thus saith the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Which I feel like almost is helpful in a way, because then it was like, in a pressureful, scary way, it was like you have freedom to choose what you want.
Yeah. And
kind of like just figure out like you as an individual, what do you want? Like, and honoring and almost giving dignity instead of like,
you have to.
Yeah, like spiritual manipulation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
And all that we knew is we don't want to live here anymore. Mm-hmm. So through a few circumstances, my parents were visiting Kansas City for a women's event, and my dad tagged along. And there were just a few people that I met that just were so warm. And it's like, oh my gosh, we miss the Roberts. We honor you. We love you. Blah, 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 blah. And it kind of like warmed my parents' heart to the idea of coming to Kansas City. Mm-hmm. I don't remember all the details, but it was like, okay, we're moving back to Kansas City. So I get back from Spain on a Monday, and on Friday we move. Mm-hmm.
That was insane.
I knew that coming back was not going to be like this amazing, like the Roberts are back when it had been 10 years, 9 years. I don't know. I knew that it wasn't going to be the same. Mm-hmm. I didn't think it was going to be bad as it was. Like we got back, nobody really gave a crap. Mm-hmm. And I think within the first 6 months, 2 people invited us over for dinner.
Yeah. And I think to like clarify for people, it wasn't a like the Roberts are back, you should like love us. It's people that we literally did like every family holiday birthdays with for like 20 years. Like they were supposed to be.
They were supposed to care.
Talked about and acted like, oh, we're in this together. We love each other and da-da-da.
We're a family.
Yeah.
And there were a few exceptions to that. There was one family that we've been close with since I was 7. They were so happy we were back. Other people who were almost, I mean, we hadn't talked to in a while. They were the more receiving of us than anybody else. Mm-hmm. But now I'm so thankful because it started to not harden my heart, But these latest blows didn't hurt as much because I already had such low expectation of the relationship at that point. So moving back to Kansas City was hard because I had just come back from Spain. And after an experience like that, there is a transitional period. And to not even get to have that because 4 days later I moved was really hard.
Yeah.
And finding a house was a nightmare. And it was just hard moving back to Kansas City. Yeah. But the highlight was I got a job about 2 or 3 months in that I'm still at and has been a gift from the Lord. And I love my job. But in general, moving back to Kansas City was rough because it was like, oh, nobody cares, really.
Yeah, which is really disheartening. It
is disheartening, but it made it easier for me to. I mean, it was still this last 6-9 months have still been really hard, but I had less expectation on them. Yeah, because of moving back in 2021. Yeah, but we have since built a new community. So my parents run, they've planted 3 house churches, and I now can say I have amazing people in my life. Yeah. That I didn't even know when I lived here as a kid. Yeah. And I'm so thankful for them.
Yeah. No, 100%. Now you guys have phenomenal community. So kind of to circle back just a little bit, I'll ask this question and then you can say, any closing remarks, but because it's hard to I feel like each season and each move we could do an entire podcast on because totally. Us as a family, us as individuals went through so much stuff. But I think one thing that would be interesting is how much stuff we watched through all of those moves of people being viciously evil towards our parents.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a whole other thing about being pastor's kids.
Yeah.
Is watching your parents get mistreated.
Yeah.
A lot.
And wanting to defend them, but also knowing it's going to fall on deaf ears. So.
And that information you weren't actually supposed to know.
Yes. And it wasn't
pastor's kids always know more than
100%.
They think they want you to think they know.
Always. And it's not even there's things being said in the household. Our parents are really good at we're not going to, they're not going to say people's names and right. We don't know things that we really shouldn't know, but it's also just kind of intuition of
and 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah. I feel I don't know. I feel in general, kids and youth and young adults, people are oh, they're all dumb.
They're a lot smarter than we think they are.
Yeah. Way smarter. So how do you think maybe describe one of the biggest whoa experiences of someone coming against mom or dad, and then I don't know, how did you experience that as their kid?
I think I won't talk about the last 6 months because we're going to talk about that later, but that's a good point in that again and again and again we've seen our parents mistreated with no avenue to defend them because we were teenagers and nobody was going to listen anyways.
Right.
But several and as I got older in Brazil, 17, 18, 19, my dad would actually, because I wasn't stupid and people talk and I knew what was going on.
Right.
So my dad would actually sit down and said, X, Y, and Z is happening. Here's what I'm doing about it. And here's why. So he was actually training me.
Yes.
And I'm so appreciative of that now. But there was 3 experiences in Brazil where we experienced deep betrayal from inside our own community.
Yeah.
By people who were supposedly our friends. And that was really hard to sit back and let people lie about the integrity of my parents. There was one guy who we were traveling at the time and he's you know what, when the Roberts come back, they shouldn't be allowed to preach at one thing. Dwayne and Jennifer shouldn't be allowed to preach at one thing, which we were doing one thing conferences down there. The founders
of one thing
of the conference in Brazil and the church shouldn't be allowed on the stage. And it was stuff like that where I'm and then I would have to see them and pretend I didn't know anything. Yeah. I'm I want to run you over with a car.
Yeah. And a lot of it was just rooted out of jealousy and pride.
Jealousy, pride, and zilch character.
Oh, yeah.
Zilch.
I remember one time, and I mean, this is another situation in another place where it was it was said that my mom and my dad, you know, like they're just horrible parents and that, you know, we've been abused all our lives. And I'm looking around, I'm like,
come at me.
I'm like, did you experience that? Because I didn't experience it. And I'm like, that. I'm like, are you kidding me? And then being like, oh yeah, like when they get on the mic and pray that God would come, you know, the spirit leaves. I was like, what Bible are you reading? Like, that's not even like.
Yeah, there was sick stuff said about our parents. Like,
stupid.
And so many times.
Yeah.
And I've, through counseling, 10 out of 10 recommend.
Absolutely.
I've been realizing a lot of those experiences was when I was younger, when there was no outlet for me to say something. But now I'm an adult.
Yep.
And I have a voice.
Yeah.
And I can speak my mind. Hence, I guess, this podcast. But it was really, 100%. There was a lot of times as a kid, teenager, in Denver, there was a lot of this where it was, I'm not even supposed to know this information.
Yeah.
And I have to see these people in the eyes and they are going to be pretend nice to me. And I'm like, you're evil.
Oh, 100%. I just remember like certain times I come home and you could hear different family members weeping.
Yeah.
And you can't do anything about it. And you just have to sit there and still pray. And that was, I mean, some of those moments of like, it legit was praying for your enemy at that moment. Yeah. Like, I was like, these are the most important people of my life. And you're coming at them with lies. And I'm like, I got dirt on you just from talking to you for 5 seconds.
Right.
That are factual. You know what I mean?
And learning how, I think I'm still learning, but how to treat. So my parents obviously pastored an entire community. I was friends with some of those people in the community and would accidentally or whatever hear about some of their struggles. Mm-hmm. And I had to go back to being friends with them without saying, hey, I know X, Y, and Z. Yep. And learning how to not treat people differently because of their sin was a skill that I had to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not.
And especially when it's like, it's different when it's like this person's being a horrible person to your family. It's different when like this person has a struggle. Mm-hmm. And now I know about it. I wish I didn't, but here we are. Yep. So I need to still be friends with that person, even though they have a pretty tremendous struggle right now.
Yeah.
And that's possible. And it's godly.
Yes.
To not judge people based on their issues with X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And that was something that I was able to learn in Brazil of like, okay, my friend right now is struggling with this. Mm-hmm. They're still my friend.
Right.
And I don't need to treat them differently because I know their struggles.
Yeah. And I will say I want to give one caveat because I feel like nowadays, like anything that anyone says can be taken like 20 different ways.
Right.
Which is hard and sad because then it's just hard to have a conversation with anybody. But I do want to make very clear that it also depends on the heart posture of that person.
Right.
That if they are harming themselves, harming other people, and they're unwilling to change, then
that's different.
Yeah, that's totally different. There needs to be hard boundaries. Sometimes the authority need to be, police need to be brought in or it reported to someone or whatever.
At the very least, completely cut off relationships.
Yes.
Which there are cases when I had to completely cut off relationships with people because I'm like, you're not a good person and you're not changing.
Yeah.
But when it's that contrite, repentant, I'm coming to my pastor saying, I need help.
Yeah, I'm struggling.
I'm struggling. Help. Please help me.
Yeah.
I have grace for that always.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
And if you're a closet psycho and you're just smiling your way through life.
Yeah, no. I think that's the beauty of the gospel. But it's also what makes it so offensive and hard at the same time to like live out and, actually walk it out. Any closing thoughts?
Sometimes you might hear some crazy stories on here, but I'm a happy, somewhat well-adjusted adult.
Yeah.
I think so are you.
Yeah.
I've actually enjoyed most of my life.
It's true.
And a lot of even the memories I have that are more negative around IHOP as a kid, like my perspective now as an adult is like, oh, that was weird or that was unhelpful. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't carry a tremendous amount of trauma. Mm-hmm. I'm not in travail thinking about these things, which I'm thankful for. But it is, okay, I'm an adult. I know things now. We all know a lot of things now. Mm-hmm. And that has given me a different perspective of certain events.
100%. Well, we'll see you next week for episode 3.
Bye.
Bye.